Welcome to episode 23 of the Intern's Oddities from around the world. This time, we will be discussing the Human Genome Project. As you may have noticed, I don't know if you saw it or not, but I mentioned it on the show this week. Uh, I'm not gonna beat around any bushes. You may or may not have heard of BlackRock. Some people believe they're basically the Illuminati because they own, a vast majority of the private businesses in this country, but I'm not getting into all that right now. If you know who they are, then you'll know why I feel this is important. And if you don't know, then, well, I just gave you a brief introduction. They're basically the Illuminati. That's what many people believe. But anyways, that's beside the point of this one. The reason I bring them up is because they have recently purchased the website Ancestry, which has given them access to every single human's DNA that has signed up for that website. Not all humans, but everyone who has signed up for that website and done DNA testing with them. BlackRock now has access to all your DNA. I mean, they probably did before through medical records, as Rob pointed out, but still something interesting to note. So, I wanted to get into that discussion a little bit tonight. I'm going to have some photos with us as well, so we'll get into that in a moment. So first, I wanted to start off by saying that individual people are losing their place in a world run by liars and hypocrites who spurn their very existence. Alright? Here is a picture of these hypocrites of which we speak. Okay? These are the hypocrites. Basically, the people who are in power who believe that nobody else should have power because they need to stay in power. And nobody else is as smart as they are, or as good of a person as they are. Whatever their reasoning is, they feel that they are the only ones that should be able to be successful and have money and power in this world. And that's why 1% owns the top wealth. They would rather replace human workers with AI and clones because that would be cheaper than human labor. But one thing I've thought about recently that I've seen some people pointing out in the discussion of AI replacing humans for labor is I've seen some people point out an argument which I find to be a very good argument that I don't think many people have thought about. When they get to this point with all this labor and everything, what are they going to do when there's nobody left with any money to actually, give them what they need? When there's nobody left with any money to buy their products, what are they going to do then? When there's no one, because the people aren't going to have jobs, so they're not going to be making any money. And they're not going to be paying the AI, so who exactly do they think is going to be buying their products? So let's go ahead and go to the next image. This is another hypocrite. This is a kind of hypocrite that will get very angry and start yelling about how everything is so important to me. It's all mine, 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 mine. Like those birds from Finding Nemo. So let's go ahead and continue. The idea was to create super soldiers using the genes and DNA of some of the best soldiers of the time. Now, before we continue, I should mention for full disclosure, this is still publicly labeled as a conspiracy theory, as far as I'm aware, but there is a lot to consider about the possibility of this actually coming to light as a reality later on down the road, seeing as how I mentioned earlier that BlackRock recently acquired Ancestry. But the Human Genome Project is potentially could have worked from a science fiction perspective, and it has been, theorized in pop culture many times. The example I'm going to use today is, of course, one of my favorite video games of all time, Metal Gear Solid. Because I feel this is important because a lot of the stuff in the different Metal Gear games is going on in the real world right now as we speak, but that's a whole other thing. I'm not getting into that right now. This is specifically about the Human Genome Project today. So, they say that the clones are created from the cells of the original host that they wanted to clone. Alright? So I got some pictures of some clones here. Alright? You know, like the Star Wars clones. So we got our clone troopers here, you know. And then after that, I had this. Simpsons, Family Guy, you know, some popular pop culture stuff involving clones. And then I got some pictures of some super soldiers, because that's what they're trying to create with, you know, all the cloning. The Human Genome Project, some people believe that part of it is they wanted to create super soldiers. So, I don't know what this is. Honestly, I was just looking on, you know, image search and Creative Commons. So all this is safe to use. And I do not own any of this. Full credit to the original authors. And then over here, we got Master Chief, you know, from the Halo games. That looks like a good one. So we'll leave that up for a minute while we continue. Alright. So, in Metal Gear Solid, they say that it was true, that if this was true, they could have used what they call the super baby method, in which they would take the cells. Now, I'm trying to be family friendly here, okay? This is a family show. Anyways, and use the cells to fertilize a female egg and then would allow it to divide into 8 clone babies. Okay? So they would get 8 clone babies from the egg. And over here, I got some pictures of the embryos, like some examples of embryos, you know. This is what the clone babies might look like. And then over here, this one is actually labeled. And if you look real closely, you can see the eye right here. It says you got their little fingers right here. There's the towers, not toes, towers, you know. Fun to talk about like that. Fun to say, you know. So let's go ahead and continue from there. And so what they did after that is the same clones were then later transferred to a woman, and then they would intentionally abort 6 of the clones before they hold on, I lost my place. I am so sorry. They would abort 6 of the clones before they were even born to encourage strong fetal growth of the remaining clones. And as a result, if successful, then both remaining clones would be born incredibly strong and resilient with all the dominant traits and genes from the original donor. Whether willing or not is a different story entirely, but that's beside the point. However, as a result of increased experimentation on the genes of these clones while they were still growing, they created a phenotype which caused one of the 2 remaining clones to gain all the dominant genes, while the other clones received all of the recessive genes. And there were only 2 left at this point, remember. So one clone gets all the positive stuff, and the other clone gets all the bad stuff. That's gotta suck to be the negative clone. In the case of Metal Gear Solid, the negative clone is Liquid Snake, and the positive clone is, of course, Solid Snake. Many people believe that the completion of the Human Genome Project will reveal many of life's secrets and lay them bare for us to be able to read them. They didn't just stop at clones. No. Once they finished learning how to map out and manipulate the human genes, they were then able to identify and isolate the soldier genes to transplant them into the next generation of special forces in order to create super soldiers, which we'll go back to that. This thing is a random, you know, it's an online generic idea of what someone thought a super soldier might look like. And then, of course, I'm sure, as you all know, Halo, Master Chief. I'm sure everyone knows about Master Chief, you know. And then I got some pictures of the DNA right here. Alright. This is, you know, what your typical DNA looks like. You remember from high school. And now here is a detailed graph of DNA. So this up here is called the minor groove. The bottom half is apparently called the major groove. Let me try to pronounce this. Pyrimidines. Pyramid pyrimidines. Yeah, that let's go with that. Pyrimidines. Oh, pyrimidines are over here. T, A, C, and G, they're different colors. And it looks like white is hydrogen, orange for oxygen, blue for nitrogen. We got some carbon and phosphorus in there, and that's pretty much what makes up our DNA. And if you want me to explain it better, I apologize. I do not understand the intricacies of DNA, but I thought this was a really cool picture, and I wanted to share it with you because I thought it was very detailed and very graphic. So, in a good way. In a good way, you know, like graphic in a good way. And I wanted to share this because I thought this was interesting. Then, you know, some more DNA, generic looking. It looks like a ladder, you know, where it connects right there. And then we'll get to this one in a minute. So, before we get to that, let's go ahead and continue. So, in 1991, the Gulf War, the military is accused of secretly injecting soldiers with this soldier gene, which they claim caused the Gulf War syndrome, which hundreds of thousands of returning soldiers complained about, and they said it was a side effect and that it was merely a cover story when they claimed it was because of exposure to depleted uranium because of anti-tank rounds. So this is some images I got at the Gulf War. I don't know if you need this or not, but in case you do, trigger warning, PTSD and wartime pictures. So I'll give you a few seconds if you need to pause the video or turn this off. Alright. Then this is a picture of one of the anti-tank missiles, I believe, with the depleted uranium. And these are some soldiers that were suffering in the war. And they were wearing gas masks because there was chemical warfare going on at the time. Then, you know, because people were calling it a cover-up, I got that. Duh. Yeah, because they experimented on people. Human experimentation during the Human Genome Project. So I thought that would be a light-hearted way to get an image for that. So yeah, first they tried to say it was PTSD, then they said it was chemical and biological weapons, and in the end it was all, some people say it was all just a cover up for government experiments. And that's where this image comes in. This is the government experiments. I thought this would be a fun picture for government experiments. So many people would even believe that our sole purpose for existing on this planet is simply to pass on our parents' genes and proliferate and prolong our very existence. Now, let's discuss the real things that we know for sure about the Human Genome Project. Alright? So, first things first. Whoa, sorry. Okay, I pushed the wrong button, my bad. So first things first. The Human Genome Project was actually real, and it began in October 1990 and was completed in April of 2003. And as a result, we were able to look at the complete Homo sapien blueprints. Now, back in 1869, a Swiss physician by the name Friedrich Miescher was the first person to successfully isolate DNA, if I can say the word, successfully. It was a $3 billion project at the time, not counting for modern day inflation, and it involved many countries. It was a $3 billion experiment, so I got some pictures of some money. $3 billion. Dr. Evil, you know, any Austin Powers fans out there? I got a picture of Dr. Evil. Why make billions when you can make millions? I thought Austin Powers was funny. A lot of people say it was stupid, but that's why I thought it was funny. Now, getting back on track, okay? So it was a $3 billion project at the time and involved many countries, including the US, the UK, Germany, China, Japan, France, and even Australia. Now, it was divided into two phases known as the shotgun phase and the finishing phase. The shotgun phase had three main goals: obtain a DNA clone to sequence the DNA clone, and then the third and final step was assembling sequence data from multiple clones to determine overlap and establish a contiguous sequence. Now, the finishing phase can actually take even longer, but to be honest, it was extremely complicated and I didn't understand it, so I apologize for my lack of understanding. But I'm not going to get into that because I don't understand it, and it wouldn't be fair for me to try and talk about something that I have no idea what I'm talking about. Now would it? So instead, let's discuss a few of our closest ancestors that we share most of our common DNA with. So we share 96% of our DNA with chimps, 70% with slugs, and of course, I saved the best for last. You'll never guess what we share 50% of our DNA with. Bananas! People are half bananas! So we share 50% of our DNA with bananas. Isn't that amazing? Don't you love sharing half your DNA with bananas? But wait a minute. Does that mean if we eat bananas, we've already gone halfway towards becoming cannibals? Oh no. I thought this was an adorable photo of potatoes eating each other. I'm like, look, and if we share 50% of our DNA with bananas, then if we eat bananas, we're basically cannibals, right? So that's what I had for you today. I thought that was some I thought that was interesting and I thought that was some fun stuff. So thank you for coming and hang out with me today, and I hope to see you next time, and I want you to stay uncanny. Thank you.